Human freed from slavery by gorgeous alien widow. Unbreakable love for earthly treasures. Jack Hardy's mind struggled to wake up, fighting through the fog of unconsciousness. The air was thick with the scent of disinfectant, almost too sharp to breathe. His skull throbbed painfully, a reminder of the neural stunner blast that had knocked him out cold. But it wasn't just the pain that disoriented him. It was the silence, the kind that spoke of nothing good. He tried to push himself up, but his body was shackled, his arms bound tightly with energy cuffs. Cold, unyielding metal met his touch. His muscles twitched with the instinct to fight, but the realization sank in fast. This wasn't a fight he could win just yet. The floor beneath him vibrated, the hum of massive engines reverberating through his bones. Where was he? The last thing he remembered was the raid. The V Empire had come to New Montana Colony, bringing death, destruction, and, worst of all, captivity. When Jack's blurry vision cleared, he saw what surrounded him. Hundreds of strange alien creatures crammed into a holding bay that seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. Some had too many limbs. Others sported skin colors that made Jack's eyes hurt just trying to process them. A few had features that didn't belong on anything that walked Earth. They were all different, but one thing was the same. They all shared the same empty look, the hollow eyes of those who had lost hope. A rasping voice broke the silence. "Welcome to Hell, Earther." Jack turned slowly to find a thin, four-eyed alien standing next to him, studying him with weary eyes. "I'm Dorn. You're the first human I've seen in this sector." The alien's skin was a dull shade of green, and his face was lined with what looked like years of suffering. Jack tried to shift his wrists in the cuffs, but the restraints were tight. He couldn't escape them. Not yet. His mind, however, was sharp. "Where are we?" he demanded, his voice low and steady, though the panic inside was crawling up his throat. "Caraxis Trading Station," Dorn answered quietly. "The V bring their catches here before the auction. Some are lucky enough to go to labor camps, the rest—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. The room was crawling with guards, hulking reptilian creatures, their exoskeletons gleaming in the cold light, shock prods crackling in their hands. The VR were ruthless slavers, an empire built on the backs of conquered species. Jack had heard rumors, but seeing them in person, it was another level of terror. A loud voice boomed, cutting through the tension. "Stand for inspection, vermin." A tall, armored figure entered the bay, flanked by guards. The slaves scrambled to their feet, all except Jack, who stayed seated, looking up at the commander with cold defiance. The guard didn't waste time. The shock prod surged forward, striking Jack's body with brutal force. Pain. His muscles seized, but Jack didn't give them the satisfaction of a scream. He clenched his teeth, refusing to bend. The pain lasted what felt like eternity, but eventually the guard backed off, leaving Jack gasping for air, still standing. "Defiant little pet," the guard hissed, his voice dripping with disdain. "You'll learn your place soon enough." But Jack Hardy wasn't about to break. Not now, not ever. The war for his life had only just begun. The mysterious Lady Narvia. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Jack Hardy stood in the holding bay, surrounded by alien captors and miserable souls who had been broken by the same fate. But just as he was starting to adjust to the hopelessness of his new reality, everything changed. The massive doors at the far end of the bay hissed open with a sound that seemed too perfect, too deliberate to be an accident. The room fell into immediate silence as the guards straightened, their eyes flicking toward the entrance, their bodies stiffening in obedience. Something, or rather someone, was coming. Jack's gaze instinctively shifted, his body tensing, expecting another guard, another harsh order, another round of torment. But what he saw instead stopped him in his tracks. A woman. A humanoid woman, but unlike any human he'd ever seen. Her skin was the color of pale ice, smooth and flawless, shimmering like frozen glass. Her features were sharp, yet somehow elegant, carrying an almost otherworldly beauty that made the air around her seem to shimmer. Her long, silver-white hair flowed behind her like a cascade of light, glowing faintly as though it had a life of its own. She was tall, poised, and moved with a grace that made the clumsy, rigid movements of the slaves around her seem even more pathetic. In her arms, she cradled a small creature, an earth Pomeranian. Jack's heart skipped a beat. The sight of something so familiar in the midst of his alien nightmare caught him off guard. The room's energy shifted. The guards, once imposing and relentless, were now deferential, almost respectful. The commander, who moments ago had been towering over Jack, lowered his weapon and bowed deeply. "Lady Narvia," the commander stammered, his voice barely audible, "we did not expect your presence today." She didn't acknowledge him at first. Her gaze swept over the room like a queen inspecting her court. Then her eyes locked onto Jack. "What disturbance interrupts my shopping?" Her voice was cold, melodic, yet filled with an authority that sent a shiver down Jack's spine. Jack didn't flinch under her gaze, though part of him wanted to. He wasn't sure why, but something in her eyes, something in the way she looked at him, made him feel as though she could see right through him. "My lady," the commander began again, his voice trembling, "this human attacked a guard. He is unruly and dangerous." Lady Narvia's eyes narrowed slightly, but instead of the expected anger, there was a flicker of something else, curiosity. She approached the slaves, stepping with a confidence that made the space around her feel smaller. "A human so far from Earth." She paused, studying Jack with intensity. "Why did you attack the guard?" she asked, her tone more inquisitive than accusatory. Jack's pulse quickened. He had a choice to make. He could lie, pretend that he was just another prisoner broken like the rest, but instead he met her gaze without flinching. "I was about to hurt someone who couldn't defend herself," he said simply. For a brief moment, the coldness in her eyes flickered with something unexpected, respect, perhaps. A silent understanding passed between them. "A fascinating response," she murmured, almost to herself. "Your species is unpredictable." Then, without another word, she turned to the commander. "I'll take this one." Jack's heart pounded as the room erupted into whispers. The guards moved to prepare him, but Lady Narvia raised a hand. "The female, too," she added, nodding toward the Irian slave Jack had tried to protect. And just like that, Jack's world shifted again. He wasn't just a prisoner anymore. He was something else, something important. The enigmatic Lady Narvia had chosen him. But why? As the guards led him away, Jack's mind raced. Who was she really? What did she want with him? And what was her true purpose in this cold, alien world? One thing was certain. His life, whatever it had been before, was never going to be the same again. The hidden agenda. The shuttle was silent, save for the soft hum of the engines and the occasional yapping of the Pomeranian in Lady Narvia's lap. Jack Hardy sat across from her, still processing everything that had happened in the last few hours. 1 minute, he was fighting to protect a stranger in the slave pen. The next, he found himself in a luxurious shuttle, bound for a place he could hardly imagine. Lady Narvia's estate was far from what Jack had expected. Every piece of the shuttle seemed carefully designed, not just for function, but for aesthetic perfection. Every detail screamed wealth, power, and control. Yet Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't simply being pampered. This wasn't some random act of kindness. Her voice broke through his thoughts. "Do you like Earth artifacts?" she asked, her eyes never leaving the small creature in her lap. Jack blinked, not sure how to respond. The question was too casual, but there was something deeper in it, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. "I guess I do," he replied, eyeing the vintage Earth objects scattered throughout the shuttle. Persian rugs, old records, even a few antique paintings. Lady Narvia's gaze lifted briefly, studying him. "I collect them," she said matter-of-factly. "Humans are fascinating, aren't they?" Jack shifted in his seat, uneasy. This conversation wasn't about artifacts. It never was. "You're not just a collector, are you?" he asked, his voice low but steady. Lady Narvia's lips curled slightly, the hint of a smile flickering across her face. "No," she admitted, her voice soft but carrying weight. "I have my reasons for everything, Jack Hardy, but I didn't bring you here for this." At that, Jack's curiosity piqued. "Then why take me?" She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "Because I've been watching Earth for a long time. I've been studying humans, your adaptability, your resilience. I'm fascinated by your species." Jack's stomach churned. Was this another trick, another way to keep him confined, part of her collection, or was there something else to her words? He leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing. "And the others, the humans you've collected, are they all pets to you?" Lady Narvia's eyes flared for a moment, a sharpness entering them that Jack hadn't seen before. "They are not pets, they are something else," she said, her tone steely. "Each of you has a role to play, but you have potential." A cold shiver ran down Jack's spine. This wasn't about just keeping humans as curiosities. It was something far darker, far more calculated. Jack could feel it in the air, a tension thick enough to suffocate him. Lady Narvia's gaze softened and she stood, gliding effortlessly to the window, staring out at the vast stretch of space beyond. "I didn't want you to be a slave, Jack, but the others, they broke so quickly. You're different." Jack's heart beat faster, the reality of his situation becoming clearer with every word. He wasn't a simple prisoner. He wasn't just a commodity for her collection. He was something much more dangerous in her eyes, an opportunity. Before Jack could speak, the shuttle lurched as it changed course, descending toward the planet below. Lady Narvia turned to him, her lips curving into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome to my sanctuary, Jack. The real test begins now." As the shuttle touched down, the sense of unease Jack had been fighting for so long hit him like a tidal wave. This wasn't a rescue. This wasn't a chance to escape. This was only the beginning. And in this game of power and survival, Jack had no idea where he stood, except that he was now playing for far higher stakes than he ever imagined. Betrayal and survival. The estate was a marvel of alien architecture, all sweeping curves and gleaming metal that blended into the exotic, purple-hued landscape outside. But Jack Hardy, though still awestruck by the beauty of it all, couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking through an elaborate trap. Lady Narvia had led him to his quarters, a luxurious suite that would have been the envy of any aristocrat back on Earth. But the moment he stepped inside, the weight of his situation settled back onto his shoulders. This wasn't freedom. This wasn't escape. This was another cage, gilded and soft, but a cage nonetheless. He couldn't help but feel like a specimen in one of her prized collections. The thought gnawed at him, but the most unsettling thing was how easily it seemed to fit. Jack had barely settled in when the sound of footsteps echoed down the hall outside. He stiffened. For a moment, he wondered if it was Lady Narvia or perhaps another servant. But when the door opened, he didn't expect the figure who walked in. It was Elena. The human woman had been here longer than Jack. At least, that's what he gathered from their brief exchange earlier. But now, seeing her up close in this strange, alien setting, Jack realized there was more to her than he'd first thought. "Elena?" he asked, his voice low with confusion. She didn't answer at first. Instead, she glanced around the room as though checking for something, or perhaps someone, before she finally met his gaze. Her eyes were tired, guarded. "Jack," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "I need to talk to you." Jack didn't have time to ask her what she meant. Elena moved quickly, her eyes flicking nervously toward the door. "I don't have much time. You need to know something important." Jack's heart skipped a beat. What's going on? What's happening here? Her eyes darted to the door again. "Lady Narvia, she's not what you think. None of this is what it seems." Jack's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Alina moved closer, lowering her voice even further. She's playing a game, and we're all pawns. The humans, the aliens, everyone. You don't understand yet, but you will. She has an agenda, and it's not just about collecting Earth artifacts. Jack's mind raced. Then what is it about? But Alina only shook her head, her eyes dark with something Jack couldn't read. I can't tell you everything now, but you need to be careful. I don't trust her, and you shouldn't either. Before Jack could ask more, the door slammed open, and two guards stepped inside. Alina froze, her expression hardening as she quickly backed away from Jack. Lady Narvia wants to see you, one of the guards growled, his tone as cold and unfeeling as the rest of their species. Alina's eyes flashed a warning, but she didn't speak. She simply gave Jack a final, tense look before she turned and left the room, leaving him alone with the guards. As the door shut behind her, Jack's mind was reeling. What had she meant? Was she trying to warn him? And if so, from what? Lady Narvia had been nothing but calm and collected, seemingly always a step ahead. But what if Alina was right? What if there was something darker lurking beneath the surface of this carefully constructed life? Jack knew one thing for sure: he couldn't trust anyone here, not even Lady Narvia, not anymore. The game was only getting started, and the stakes were higher than he'd ever imagined. The Galactic War. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a deep orange glow over the vast gardens that surrounded Lady Narvia's estate. Yet, inside the walls of her grand villa, a storm was brewing. Jack Hardy stood at the window of his suite, watching the tranquil landscape, but his mind was far from peaceful. The truth about Lady Narvia's intentions was beginning to unravel, thread by thread. Alina's warning echoed in his mind, and despite the luxury and comfort that surrounded him, Jack couldn't ignore the growing unease. He wasn't just a captive anymore. He was a part of something much larger, something far more dangerous. The sound of footsteps interrupted his thoughts. He turned, and there she was, Lady Narvia herself, gliding into the room with that same cold confidence. The ethereal beauty that had drawn him in before now seemed like a mask, hiding a mind far more calculating and dangerous than he'd realized. "Jack," she began, her voice smooth, yet tinged with something hard to decipher, "you've been quiet today. Not much for conversation." Jack didn't reply immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the setting sun. "I've been thinking," he said finally, his voice measured, "about everything, about why I'm here, why you're doing this." She didn't move, but the air around her seemed to shift. "And what have you concluded?" she asked, her voice softer, but there was a sharpness lurking beneath it. "I think I've been caught in the middle of something much bigger than myself," Jack said, turning to face her, his eyes hardening. "I don't think you brought me here just because I caught your eye. This isn't just about collecting humans or Earth artifacts. There's more to it." Lady Narvia's eyes glinted, and for a moment Jack thought he saw a flicker of something else, something unfamiliar, but it was gone almost instantly. "You're correct," she replied, her tone calm, controlled. "There is more at stake than you realize. You are, after all, part of a much larger plan." Before Jack could respond, a voice came through a comm device on the wall. "My lady, the Galactic Council has summoned you," the voice said, crackling slightly. Jack's stomach tightened. The Galactic Council. The name was heavy with meaning, a shadow that stretched far beyond the borders of Earth. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something global, something intergalactic. Lady Narvia's gaze shifted toward the device, and then back to Jack. "The time has come," she said softly, almost as if to herself. "The Council votes soon on Earth's place in the galaxy." Jack stepped forward. "What does that mean? What's the Council deciding?" She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "Earth is at a crossroads. The Council will vote on whether to isolate your species or bring you into the fold. It's a matter of power, of survival." Jack's mind raced. He understood the gravity of the situation now. Earth wasn't just a target for the V Empire. It was on the verge of being excluded from the galaxy itself. And if Earth was isolated, its people would be left at the mercy of those who saw them as nothing more than resources. The VR and their allies will stop at nothing to ensure Earth stays out of the galactic picture, Lady Narvia continued, her voice low. If they succeed, humanity's future will be sealed, controlled, exploited, or worse. Your people will be slaves to forces you can't even comprehend. Jack's heart pounded. The weight of her words hit him hard. He wasn't just fighting for survival now. He was fighting for his planet, for everything he knew. But we have a chance, Lady Narvia said, stepping closer to him. I've fought to give Earth a voice, to keep your species from being swallowed whole, but this is bigger than even I realized. Jack felt the weight of her words sink in. This wasn't just about one man, one woman, or even one planet. This was about the balance of power in the galaxy itself. We need to make sure the Council hears us, Lady Narvia said, her voice firm. And we need to stop the V Empire before they can make their move. For the first time since his capture, Jack felt a spark of hope, small but real. The odds were still stacked against them, but this fight wasn't over. Not yet. And as the doors to the council chamber loomed ahead, Jack knew that the war for Earth's survival, for his people's freedom, had just begun. Secrets unveiled. The night air was still, the only sound the soft whisper of wind through the alien trees surrounding Lady Narvia's estate. But inside the high-tech walls of her private research facility, the tension was palpable. Jack Hardy couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change, something that would alter everything he'd thought he knew about Lady Narvia and about the galaxy itself. He stood in front of a sleek, minimalist console, watching as Lady Narvia worked, her fingers moving deftly over holographic displays. The room was filled with alien technology, but everything had a familiar touch to it: Earth artifacts, strange devices, and research materials that seemed far too advanced for one being to manage alone. "You've been quiet again," Lady Narvia said without looking up, her voice soft but carrying an edge that made Jack's heart race. "More questions?" Jack took a breath, steadying himself. "I need to understand all of this. Why Earth? Why us?" Lady Narvia's fingers paused on the console. She turned to him, her eyes cold and unreadable, yet something flickered beneath the surface. "You don't fully comprehend what's at stake, do you?" she asked, her tone sharp now. "Humanity's adaptability, its ability to survive in the most hostile environments, it's the key to something much larger than you realize." The weight of her words hung in the air. "What are you talking about?" Jack demanded, his pulse quickening. "What is it you're really after?" She took a slow, deliberate step toward him, and for the first time Jack saw a flash of vulnerability in her eyes. "My people, the Thesians, are dying," she said, her voice low, as though the truth itself pained her to admit. "We've manipulated our genetics for centuries, striving for perfection. But now our species is weakening. Birth rates are plummeting. We're fading into extinction." Jack's mind whirled. Thesians, Lady Narvia's people. He had always seen them as distant, perfect beings. But now, he saw the cracks beneath their flawless facade. "Humanity's DNA, your adaptability, it could be the key to saving us," she continued, her voice rising with urgency. "We've studied your species, Jack, your resilience. Your biology is far more powerful than you understand. The hybridization process, it's the only way to save my people." Jack's stomach tightened as the pieces began to fall into place. "Hybridization?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "You're using us, studying us like lab rats." Lady Narvia's eyes hardened, her voice tinged with a mix of regret and determination. "We have no choice. My father Karth believed in humans. He believed you were the future of galactic society, but he died because of his beliefs. Drax, the one who opposes all of this, he killed him, Jack. He's trying to stop everything we've worked for." Jack's mind reeled. The political intrigue, the deadly games being played by the galaxy's most powerful factions. He was caught in the middle of a struggle that spanned far beyond Earth, far beyond anything he could have imagined. And Lady Narvia, she wasn't just a captor. She was someone trying to save her people, even if it meant crossing lines Jack had never imagined. "So Drax wants to stop the research," Jack said slowly, piecing it together. "He wants to keep humanity isolated because he sees us as a threat." "Exactly," Lady Narvia replied, her voice low, almost a whisper. "He believes that humanity's unpredictability and adaptability threaten the order of the galaxy. He wants to use that to fuel his own power, and he'll stop at nothing to destroy what we're doing here." Jack felt the weight of it all, the war, the experiments, the betrayals. It was bigger than he ever thought possible. And in the middle of it stood Lady Narvia, an alien who had collected humans for years, trying to save her species from extinction. "Why didn't you tell me this sooner?" Jack asked, his voice a mixture of frustration and understanding. Lady Narvia's gaze softened for a moment. "Because I wasn't sure you would understand. I wasn't sure I could trust you. But you're different, Jack. You're not like the others. You have the strength to see beyond the surface. And you might be the one who can help me stop Drax." Jack stood there, caught between the weight of his anger and the pull of something deeper, something he couldn't quite name: trust, betrayal, hope, fear. Everything was tangled up in this strange alliance with a being who had once been his captor, now his potential ally. "So what now?" he asked quietly. Lady Narvia's lips curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Now we fight, and we finish what my father started." As she turned back to the console, activating the holographic displays once again, Jack knew that the fight for Earth was far from over. But now, it wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight for the future of two species, one that would either unite them or tear them apart. And in the middle of it all stood Jack Hardy, caught between the galaxy's politics and the woman who had changed everything for him. The final stand and a new beginning. The tension in the air was thick enough to slice with a knife. Jack Hardy stood on the bridge of Lady Narvia's sleek vessel, staring out at the black expanse of space. He could feel the ship's engines vibrating beneath his feet, a constant reminder that they were in motion. But where they were going, and what would happen when they got there, was beyond anyone's control. Lady Narvia, standing beside him, was calm, too calm. She gazed out at the stars, her silver-white hair glowing softly in the low light of the bridge. Her expression was unreadable, but Jack could see the flicker of worry in her eyes, one she was careful to hide. "We'll be ready," she said quietly, her voice betraying none of the uncertainty that hung in the air. Jack glanced at her, his heart pounding. "Ready for what? What happens now?" She turned to him, her gaze steady. "We face Drax and his forces. We make sure the Galactic Council knows what's at stake. We take the evidence, the research, and we present it. If we can expose him, if we can prove the truth of what he's been doing, then humanity and my people have a chance." A chill ran down Jack's spine. The stakes were higher than ever. The Galactic Council's vote was just hours away, and Lady Narvia's enemies were closing in fast. But this wasn't just about political maneuvering anymore. It wasn't just about Drax or the Council. It was about the future of every species in the galaxy. He turned toward the tactical display, which flickered with alarming data. A fleet of ships, Drax's ships, were closing in fast, moving with precision. The situation was grim, but they weren't out of options yet. Not if they could make it to the Council in time. "How much longer?" Jack asked, the urgency in his voice cutting through the calm atmosphere. Lady Narvia glanced at the display, then back at him. "Less than an hour. We have to make it to the Council meeting before Drax can stop us. If we're caught in this fight, it'll be over." Jack clenched his fists. "Then let's make sure we're not caught." The plan was simple, but the execution was anything but. Lady Narvia's vessel was fast, but Drax's forces were relentless. They had been tracking them for hours, and time was slipping through their fingers. The only chance they had was to outrun the blockade and slip past their pursuers. But even as the plan formed, Jack knew that the real fight wasn't in the stars above, it was in the meeting rooms of the Galactic Council, where the future of Earth and the Thesians would be decided in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, the quiet hum of the engines shifted, and the proximity alarm blared, snapping Jack out of his thoughts. He glanced up at the screen. Drax's flagship was in visual range. This wasn't just a chase anymore. It was war. "They're here," Lady Narvia said, her voice cold and resolute. "Brace yourself." The ship rocked violently as Drax's forces fired upon them. Jack stumbled, gripping the nearest console as the ship veered sharply to avoid a direct hit. He could hear the comms crackling with orders. Lady Narvia's crew was already on it, coordinating their defenses and preparing to fight back. "Target their engines," Lady Narvia commanded, her voice sharp and decisive. "Disable them before they can pursue us." The ship shuddered again, and Jack's instincts kicked in. The fight wasn't over yet, not while there was a chance to stop Drax and expose his crimes. He raced toward the weapons bay, his mind focused. Every second counted now. As Jack and the crew worked in tandem, the battle outside grew fiercer. The sound of energy weapons clashing filled the ship, but Jack pushed it all out of his mind. There was only one thing that mattered: reaching the council, reaching the truth. Minutes later, Jack returned to the bridge, breathless but determined. Lady Narvia stood at the center, her eyes flickering with a mix of anger and resolve. "We're almost there," she said, turning to face him. "We'll make it through this, together." Jack nodded, his eyes locked with hers. "Then let's make sure this counts. We expose Drax and everything he's done. We make sure Earth has a future." The ship rocked again, and Jack felt the tension mount in his chest. The countdown was on. There was no turning back now. As they neared the Council's docking station, the final battle loomed. Drax's ships closing in fast, but Earth's future and their survival depended on the choices they made in the next few moments. Jack didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing for certain. This was no longer just about survival. It was about standing up for what was right, no matter the cost. And as the ship broke through the blockade and entered the Council's space, Jack's heart surged with a final burst of hope. The future of humanity and his relationship with Lady Narvia was no longer in the hands of the stars. It was in his, and he wasn't going to let it slip away. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon for more amazing videos.